Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I would like to inform you that this is a public event which is being recorded. There are also photographers and videographers who will be taking pictures. So if you don't want your picture taken, please politely tell them not to take your picture. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone of the house rules. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and the principles of academic freedom will be upheld during this event. However, let me be absolutely clear. We have a zero-tolerance policy for sexism, racism of any kind, classism, ableism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, or any kind of form of hate speech. If you violate any of these, you will be politely asked to leave. My name is Dimitris Bouris, and I'm an associate professor and a Monnet chair at the Department of Political Science at the University of Amsterdam. And I would like to thank my colleagues from the UVA staff for Palestine for all their support for this event, as well as the Amsterdam Institute for Social Science Research, the Amsterdam Center for Conflict Studies, and the Amsterdam Center for Middle East Studies. Over a year ago, we gathered at the University of Amsterdam with Francesca Albanese, Omar Barghouti, and Arella Graziani, trying to make sense of what was happening in Gaza. Today, we are confronting with something even worse. A genocide which has been live-streamed before our eyes, a war which expanded in Lebanon, and although a truce is now in place, who knows for how long, and what we are seeing is a surge of the Israeli violence in the West Bank, with systematic aerial and ground attacks on Jenin, Nablus, Tulkarem, and Tubas governorates, particularly targeting refugee camps. When we gathered with Francesca, Omar, and Arella, we feared that all this was coming, although we hoped it wouldn't. We feared it because many of us have dedicated our professional lives and careers to studying and researching this. We had followed senior Israeli officials pre-October 7th statements, openly advocated for the genocide of Palestinians and the obliteration of Gaza. There is even a website which has gathered all these statements, lawforpalestine.org. The evidence is there, but we have failed to act. And this is a collective failure, ethical, legal, individual, institutional, and political. We are complicit. We are all perpetrators. The individuals who looked away saying, I cannot watch this anymore, or I don't have time for that. The ones who struggled, oh, there are so many injustices in this world, why just focus on this? The self-proclaimed neutrals who insisted that we must remain objective, as if neutrality in the face of genocide is anything but complicity. Mainstream media sanitized the slaughter, diluted the horror, and peddled propaganda. They racialized an entire people, casting them as disposable. They parroted the language of both sides, creating false equivalencies while bodies piled up. Corporations and institutions carried on business as usual, funding and profiting from all this atrocity. Arms manufacturers made billions. Tech giants enabled the spread of disinformation. Banks laundered blood money. Governments sent weapons, vetoed ceasefires, and shielded war criminals. We all fed this monster, piece by piece. We contributed to the undermining of international law, rendering the ICJ and ICC toothless, reducing the United Nations to a stage of performative outrage. Resolutions vetoed, atrocities excused. The so-called international liberal order is not just crumbled, but it's being dismantled piece by piece through our actions or inactions. When our students everywhere rose up demanding that their universities sever ties with institutions complicit in genocide, they were brutalized by the police. Neoliberal university leaders prioritized order over ethics, commerce over conscience, and were more disturbed by the people who protested a genocide than with those who were actually committing one. They too have contributed to feeding this beast. Have you wondered why education is always one of the first targets of extreme right-wing governments, policies, and ideologies? Why do authoritarian regimes fear universities, books, and critical thought? Why did the Israeli army, from the very start, flatten every single university in Gaza and assassinated students and academics? Why is there a global witch hunt against scholars and students who dare to protest their university's complicity? Because knowledge is dangerous to tyranny. Because, as Hippocrates said, science begets knowledge. Mere opinion breeds ignorance. And ignorance is what the master needs to survive. It fears the informed, the critical, the defiant. But knowledge alone is not enough. We must act on it. We as academics are also complicit in this failure. Too many of our colleagues hide behind the illusion of objectivity, unwilling to take a stand. Our institutions and universities do the same, sanitizing horror with bureaucratic detachment, calling genocide merely recent events in Gaza, reducing mass slaughter to sterile, bloodless words. And this is how scholasticide happens, not just through bombs and bullets, but through silence. Through the silencing of students and staff, through the suppression of solidarity, through endless debates about complexity, nuance, and reflexivity, as if intellectual posturing absolves moral responsibility. But these arguments and tactics are not new. They are steeped in colonial racist continuities. During apartheid in South Africa, white South Africans dismissed the suffering around them as too complicated. And today history repeats itself, and we are the ones writing the next chapter. Academia must be more than a silent witness. It must be a battleground for truth, facts, and research. But instead of this, the administrators of universities have opted for discussions about feelings and opinions, thus going against the very nature of the core mission of the university, which is to produce knowledge based on facts and research, not feelings. But let's confront the truth. Israeli munitions have burned Palestinians alive. Israeli snipers have shot Palestinian children in the head while they were playing in their homes. Israeli soldiers boasted on TikTok about flattening entire buildings and killing women and children. Doctors have been forced to perform amputations on children without anesthesia. More than 16,000 children have been killed, according to official numbers, although we all know that this number is much higher. More than 902 entire families' bloodlines have been wiped from Gaza's registry. 900 family bloodlines erased. Let this sink in. Every single genetic member of a family, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, sons, daughters, sisters, brothers have been slaughtered. Let this sink in. And instead of focusing on this, we are focusing on discussing whether we should use the G word or not, genocide. If experts of international law, Holocaust and genocide are telling us that there is a genocide unfolding, with also providing extensive report with details, then why we are not listening to them? If you combine the verdicts of the ICJ, the United Nations and the ICC, then Israel is an occupying apartheid state that is plausibly committing genocide and whose leader should be arrested. And this is not a political statement, it's just the interpretation of international law. Yet instead of confronting all this, senior leaderships in universities react to the word genocide by arguing that we should leave the semantics aside, hiding behind their white privilege and white fragility. Seeing our own institutions and colleagues failing to uphold core human rights principles makes the situation even more painful. Let's remember that human rights are protected and defended by taking sides, not by turning a blind eye. Human rights were not granted to any of us out of kindness. They were won through relentless struggles, from the abolition of slavery to decolonization, from the fight for women's suffrage to civil rights movements. It's a battle against oppression, demanding justice through resistance. Future generations will rightly hold us to account for moral bankruptcy, but they must succeed where we have failed, bringing forth a world where the existence of some does not justify the extinction of others, where international law matters and it is not just reduced to a footnote. The brutal suppression of dissent on campuses is a microcosm of the violence in Gaza. A war waged not just on bodies, but a war waged on ideas, on resistance, on hope, and the fight for human rights and justice. But hope is resilient. It lives in every Palestinian child who dares to smile under the rubble. It lives in our students who refuse to be silenced. And it lives in all of us when we choose to speak out, to act, resist, and stand against injustice. And this is where I want to express my deepest gratitude to all our colleagues from the UVA staff for Palestine, and to also our incredible students who, instead of merely being taught by us, they have become our teachers, showing us the true meaning of courage, solidarity, and justice. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your tireless efforts and your fierce allyship. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for speaking out, for refusing to be silenced in the face of injustice. Thank you for being such amazing human beings. I know very well that you are not here to listen to me, so I would like to conclude this with a very long quote from Edward Said, which perfectly encapsulates the responsibility of intellectuals. And I quote, "Nothing in my view is more reprehensible than those habits of mind in the intellectual that induce avoidance, that characteristic turning away from a difficult and principled position which you know to be the right one, but which you decide not to take. You do not want to appear too political. You are afraid of seeming controversial. You are afraid you want to keep a reputation for being balanced, objective, moderate. Your hope is to be asked to consult, to be on board of prestigious committees, and to remain within the responsible mainstream. For an intellectual, these habits of mind are corrupting par excellence. If anything can denature, neutralize, and finally kill a passionate intellectual life, is the internalization of such habits. Personally, I have encountered them in one of the toughest of all contemporary issues, Palestine, where fear of speaking out about one of the greatest injustices in modern history has hobbled, blinkered, muzzled many who know the truth and are in a position to serve it. For despite the abuse and vilification that any outspoken supporter of Palestinian rights and self-determination earns for him or herself, the truth deserves to be spoken, represented by an unafraid and compassionate intellectual. End of quote. Tonight with us we have one of these unafraid and compassionate intellectuals, a woman who refuses to be intimidated by power, a woman who holds institutions accountable with unwavering integrity, a woman who stands firm in the face of injustice, armed with facts, law, and moral clarity. A woman who inspires courage in others by embodying it herself. A woman who transforms outrage into action, silence into resistance, and complicity into accountability. Standing here today as a testament to courage, integrity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Francesca Albanese, a warm welcome from all of us.